Suffering is inherent to being human, and I think it's important to distinguish between pain, grief, and suffering. Pain is the raw, immediate response to loss, injury, or disappointment. It's a signal from our body, our hearts, that something really matters. Grief, too, is not a pathology, but a natural process of expressing love that no longer has a place to go. Though it's painful, it's not necessarily inherent to suffering. It coexists with love and with meaning. And suffering, on the other hand, is not just what happens to us, but the story we attach to what happens. It's more of an ongoing narrative. I think of the distinction as being very similar to the difference between fear and anxiety, where fear arises in the presence of an immediate threat, and anxiety projects that threat into the future. Likewise, pain belongs to the immediacy of the experience, while suffering kind of extends that through time and story. Of course, not all suffering is equal. There's the kind that is just woven into daily life, and then there's the kind that shatters everything we understand. So I think of maybe more of a singular event, like, for instance, a breakup. The end of a relationship brings real pain. There's a heartache that is real, natural, and needs to be felt. Um, but often suffering continues long after the event has ceased. And that's through the story we tell ourselves that I'm not lovable, I'm not enough, I'll always be alone. And these narratives become kind of the emotional loops that keep us bound to the original wound, even after the event has passed, and even though the thoughts don't reflect the truth. Yet when pain is chronic, relentless, or inescapable, think of things like war, famine, violence, terminal illness, or even a grief that reshapes our existence. Think of like the death of a child. It becomes really difficult to separate suffering from survival. And it's kind of like asking a person to heal from trauma when they remain in the environment that continues to inflict it. And yet, even in these unthinkable circumstances, human beings have at times found a way to transcend. Think of Viktor Frankl from within the horrors of a concentration camp, observing that those who have a why to live can bear almost any how, and in some way, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds meaning. And Eckhart Tolle describes suffering as a doorway to awakening. So both perspectives suggest that our relationship to suffering, rather than suffering itself, kind of determines whether it imprisons us or transforms us. And yet I don't believe that this is something that can be preached to tell someone in the midst of an atrocity or despair that their suffering is a path to awakening risks being quite cruel. And it can be a form of spiritual bypassing when it's imposed rather than discovered. I think simply being with someone, even in silent presence, is often much more valuable. However, when a person is maybe trapped in a cycle of unnecessary suffering, the kind that's born from self-condemnation or distorted internal narratives, then I think speaking truth with tenderness can be a compassionate act. So we may not be able to answer the question of why suffering happens, but knowing that suffering is an integral part of the human story, and how we meet it within ourselves and with one another, I think has the capacity to shape its meaning.